Academica Media. From Academica Media Studios in Miami, Florida, it's Big Ideas in Education, a weekly recap of inspiration and innovation in your schools.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Big Ideas in Education. I am Dr. Sarah Boulos of Somerset Academy Schools, joined, of course, by my co-host, Ryan Kairalla of Doral College. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Sarah. Great to be chatting
Got a
with
little head bopping going there. You're getting into the music.
It's a fun song. You know, like we're just supposed to be this like little education podcast out to inform people, and our theme song just happens to slap really hard. I don't know what to tell you.
I have to say what gets me, and this is going to be totally not anything people hear probably, but we use StreamYard to help us with the recording, and the little StreamYard song where you test your speakers, that's my favorite song. Like,
testing your, oh man, that's such a deep cut, but actually it's a lot more people are understanding this because I'm hearing about a lot more educators using StreamYard.
Okay.
And so as this, because, we've been spreading this gospel for a while, Sarah, about how teachers need to be getting into StreamYard and using it and podcasting. We've done PD sessions on this.
That's
and
right.
So as it grows, like more and more people are discovering this amazing platform and are falling in love with the testing your speakers StreamYard song.
It's such a good song. Not to hate on our intro song, but that StreamYard song is just so good.
It's amazing.
Gets stuck in my head. But since we've lost everyone now, Ryan has a top secret story. He wouldn't even tell me what his topic was before we started today. So I'm really excited to hear what you have.
I do. I wanted to get your genuine reaction on this. Sarah, first question.
I cannot wait.
Okay. What would you say is a teaching tool that you cannot live without?
Cannot live without. Is this like a desert island thing where you only get to bring 3 things?
Not even 3 things. Like
I don't know. Can't.
You're teaching on a school in a desert island, apparently, and
right.
you only
I'm
get
gonna
one thing.
go way off and say my glasses.
Well, that's pretty important. I myself would have said an unlimited supply of dry erase markers because I always seem to have run out of those when you need them the most. But in a recent article in Edutopia, Sarah, kindergarten teacher Leslie Chapman wrote a delightful article about one teaching tool that's been particularly indispensable for her as an early childhood educator. And though I am not an early childhood educator myself, I am a particular fan of this teaching tool, and I actually have one right here.
Oh. I see why he didn't want me to.
That's right.
That's adorable.
It is my ukulele.
Aww.
In her recent article titled Adding Music to Your Classroom with a Ukulele, Miss Chapman talks about how she was motivated to pick up the instrument after joining the kindergarten teaching team at Marin County Day School. Quote, I found the ukulele to be an accessible teaching tool to bring more music into the classroom. Each year that I've taught since joining the team, I found myself using the ukulele more and more throughout the school day. Miss Chapman talks about how she uses her 4-string teaching assistant to help the students with phonics and word study by having them sing along to songs and playing with rhymes and alliteration. A ukulele song can also help get your students' attention and help students transition from one phase of class to another. She even talks in the article about having a cleanup song. When she starts playing the cleanup song on the ukulele, the students know it's time to clean up. The article even talks about how there are plenty of ukulele-friendly children's songs that can teach basic science concepts. I mean, look no further than pretty much the entirety of Raffi's catalog. The man was a scientist masquerading as a children's music composer. The ukulele in particular is a great choice for teachers who want to incorporate a little music into their classroom since it is small, affordable, and relatively easy to learn. And just to show you more props, I want to show you how small these things get. So the one I'm holding here, Sarah, for the video audience, this is a tenor ukulele. So it's a little bit bigger, but they get really, really small. This is the smallest one I have.
Oh my goodness.
This is a sopranino ukulele, and it actually plays. It's adorable.
Like smaller than your forearm.
It is, yeah. It is super duper tiny.
It's really small.
And I absolutely love it. But yeah, so they're small, they're very affordable. They can get as cheap as like $25 or $50, and for teachers they're relatively easy to learn because it's only 4 strings. And Miss Chapman imparts one last piece of advice in the article for teachers who are thinking about embracing this instrument. Quote, while picking up a new instrument may feel daunting, bringing the ukulele into your classroom provides many opportunities for joyful exploration and learning. A teacher after my own heart, Dr. Phi. This is, how as a uke player, how could I not adore this article?
Well, first of all, I had no idea that we had such a star on our show. I had no idea you played the ukulele and this was such a big part of your life. I'm learning
I
so much
love the
today.
uke. Well, I
That's
actually started
awesome.
off as a guitar player. I mean, I
Okay.
picked it up in high school, and I still play guitar, but I transition more to ukulele for the same reason that teachers are embracing this instrument. It's a lot easier to bring around places. A guitar is this big hulking mass that you got to take anywhere. A ukulele is small enough that you can take it on a plane with you. You can put it in the overhead compartment. And so it's a fun transportable instrument. And whenever you see somebody pull a ukulele out, like there's something in our brains, we're just triggered to start smiling. Like you cannot see a ukulele and not smile. And it's
It's like
that
seeing
way
a
for
puppy.
students as well. Even though I'm not an early childhood educator, Sarah, I have been known to pull out this instrument for my college students from time to time to,
And
make
how
a little
does that
song.
go? No, I don't mean you need to play the song, but like what is their reaction when you do that?
Oh, universal applause. And
Really?
I'll make a little rhyme about, ethics or something. And because it's in song form, because it rhymes, they will remember that for the rest of their life. That
So
is
I was going
guaranteed to
to
stick in their
say,
head.
I don't know if it's because we have some kind of connection with music or, if it sticks particularly if you're musically inclined or not, but I personally, I can tell you from my own life, I remember rhymes and I remember songs. And when you were talking about science facts, I remember things from watching Bill Nye when I was a kid, right? There are songs from Bill Nye the Science Guy that still, if I hear it, I'm like, I remember that. I remember the song about the stress, like, let's talk about stress, baby. Do you remember that one?
Of course I
I
do.
never forgot that when I was a kid. It was because it was a really popular song on the radio too. And then hearing it on Bill Nye when they were talking about stress. So I still remember that stress song. I still remember the planets because of a song that I think it wasn't even when I was that little, but when my younger brother, I want to say there was like maybe a Blues Clues song or something about planets. I'm probably wrong about what show it was, but I never forgot that. So even just my own memory, there are songs that, I probably remember most of my American history from Hamilton, it's not, I don't know how much of that is, sorry, as history teachers are going to be like, it's not all accurate. I know that. But there are some things that I, picked up from that I was like, that's real. That happened. So yeah, I think there's a huge thing to be understood, even if you are not a music player, like if you are, actually picking up an instrument is something that's a little daunting. Just playing songs, I think, can be a huge learning tool. And not only in early childhood, which is obviously the focus of what you were sharing, but I think even with older students and things that we ingrain very young, will, you know, be huge later on or might stick with people later on. I will never forget. I am one who just kind of like, hums little tunes or just make up little songs while I'm doing something. So like making a salad, make up a little salad song for the children in my life. And so I'll never forget while we were all in quarantine, my nephew spent a lot of time with us because his daycare was closed. And when we would take our little quarantine walks, as so many of us did, in those early days of lockdown, we would go for little walks and we would cross the street and I would hold his hand and I sang the, crossing the street song about holding hands. It's just something I made up on the spot. I will never forget. This is, 2 years later. And sometimes his mom will call me and say, what's the crossing the street song? I don't know what that is. He keeps asking me to sing the crossing the street song. And I'm like, I just made it up one day. I don't know how it goes, but it's those kinds of things that stick in kids' minds and it really helps them learn things. I've heard little songs for early childhood from like brushing your teeth to, this is how we get dressed. This is how we brush our hair, brush our teeth, little songs that help kids remember steps, remember order really great. And then as they get a little older, understanding rhyme and facts and things like that. I can't tell you how in love I am with your story. It's awesome, it's adorable, but it really works. And so I think as a person who doesn't spend as much time working with early childhood, I think what this tells me too is don't forget that these little early childhood mnemonics and songs and things like that can be really impactful and really helpful for older learners as well, not just older students, but today, these are things that I still do. I'll never forget. I used to have a song, I think when I was like in AP US history, which I think they call it A-Push now. But I remember we had a song, I think for all the presidents, right? And for their terms. And that helped me. I mean, there's songs about the periodic table and all these other things that you just need to remember. And
Well,
I'm going to be honest, I don't remember all of the presidents now, but I did back then. It helped me get my score.
I can tell you that 12-year-old Ryan completely owes acing his states and capitals quiz to the Animaniacs States and Capitals song. I was
oh my goodness.
Even to this, oh my God, the Animaniacs, by the way, like they should win some kind of teaching award, like because they had really great social studies songs. Like I'm there on the test, like 12-year-old me just humming to myself, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Columbus is the capital of Ohio, and I'm never gonna forget it because
That's
of
awesome.
just the power of songs to help us learn stuff, remember stuff, internalize stuff. It's fantastic.
I couldn't agree more.
Excellent. Well, you got a pretty terrific story yourself, Sarah. I do know this one because you told me about it, and it definitely puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, for the past decade, Hispanic students in Colorado have been graduating at a much higher rate than in the previous decade. This is according to a report from Chalkbeat, which examined the high school graduation rates as part of Chasing Progress, a Colorado news collaborative project on social, economic, and health equity among Black and Latino Coloradans. High school graduation holds the key to advanced education, better jobs, and higher salaries. So they examine things, for example, like with Marissa Beltran, a 2015 graduate who compared her high school experience to her own mother's, who dropped out of high school in the 90s. Even before ninth grade, Marissa learned she could take college classes as a student in high school. The school bused her to and from the college campus. And that is one of many factors being credited for the increase in graduation rates in the state. From 2010 to 2020, graduation rates for Hispanic students rose from 55.5% to 75.4%. An increase, but still a lower rate than those of white students in the same area. To better understand the stories behind these rate increases, Chalkbeat interviewed educators, activists, parents, and students, along with doing analysis of school district data. Several elements were identified as being part of the formula for this rate increase, including the understanding of how critical it is to get students off to a really firm start in ninth grade. After Superintendent Rico Munn arrived in Aurora in 2013, he found many freshmen weren't receiving full schedules with required classes. If you start getting off track in ninth grade, that's a problem, Munn said. The district examined data to identify problems in students who needed help and then worked to change systems and school culture, Munn said. Aurora also opened a career and college center at every high school. This also included partnering with nonprofits and community organizations to get intervention support to students much earlier than before. Intervention often looks like teaching them how to be a high school student, staying organized, and asking teachers for help, said Susanna Holbrook, a ninth grade interventionist for Zero Dropouts, a program that they partnered with. In Greenlee, early intervention means tracking ninth graders to create individual plans to ward off failure. Years ago, many of our resources went to students who had 3 or 4 Fs already on their transcript, said Deirdre Pilch, superintendent of Greeley-Evans District 6 schools. Now, she said, as soon as a grade starts to drop to a D, we're intervening. This report included so many other interesting finds that contributed to this graduation rate improvement, including providing offerings for college courses in high school, what we might call dual enrollment. Here, they call it concurrent enrollment, Participation of Hispanic students went from less than 5% in 2010 to over 30% in that decade. In addition, many school districts switched to standards-based grading, something that we've talked about on the show several times. And I'm very eager to share this article. Obviously, we'll be putting it in the description box of the show, but I think there's so many lessons that can be learned from this case in Colorado.
It's so wonderful to hear. And it reminds us of what we're seeing in Florida in terms of the success of Hispanic students and how much that population has excelled in just a generation or two. Great to see similar things happening in Colorado. To me, the first impression I get with it is the kind of particular nature of the interventions that are happening there. Like, it's individualized. It is early intervention. The moment that they see even a slight dip, they're on it. And I think that's the kind of purposeful, active intervention that you need to really see results in students. It has to be fast, it has to be individualized, and it has to follow a student throughout the entirety of their high school and into college tenure. Because when you're talking about populations like these that may be more predisposed to being in a lower socioeconomic status or have a lot of other external challenges facing institutional racism and things like that, there are going to be lots of places on their timeline where they could slip, where they could face some adversity, and you have to be there for them every step of the way. And only by doing that can you see those differences get made in a generation.
I love that Marissa, Marissa's case was talking about how she knew about these options before she even got to high school. And I think that that's really critical too, is having those conversations with students and helping them much earlier on. So I think that having those interventions in place is fantastic. And I like the way that they said interventions are not necessarily what we used to think they are, right? In a lot of situations, interventions are simply, academic interventions. Here they talked about how it taught them how to be a high school student, right? How to organize themselves. I can speak from personal experience with some students that I've had. We had a year where the only intervention, well, that's not true. We had many other interventions, but we increased intervention in one specific area where the intervention was us sitting down with groups of students and talking to them and putting things in a planner, showing them how to put reminders in their phones, setting up calendars with them, teaching them how to go and talk to their teachers about needing help, getting tutoring options, really just empowering students and teaching them how to fish, for to use that metaphor, helping them see what options are available for them. And I think the earlier we do it and the consistency, there was something in this article that mentioned there was an 18-year-old talking about how he met with his counselor, or his counselor just kept hounding him and hounding him and hounding him. And even when he wasn't listening, they just kept going. They didn't give up on him. And just one day something clicked and he realized that they were doing this for his benefit. And he was so grateful that those opportunities were there for them.
So it can't just be about, you certainly can't just have the program and expect people to come find it.
Absolutely not.
And it sounds like, the schools have to take an active role in making these interventions happen, and they have to be prepared to getting no's, or at least not active reciprocation on the part of the student at first. And you have to keep coming back to them, it sounds like.
It does. And, making sure that there is that constant support and that students know, regardless of what happens, we're going to be here and we're going to make sure that you have these opportunities in front of you. Something that's not mentioned in the article, but that I know from working here in South Florida, something like probably close to 10 years ago, I'm trying to think just off the top of my head because this is not something I have in front of me, but I know that Miami-Dade County Public Schools decided about a decade ago that they were going to take a very different approach, and that they were saying, once the student gets to high school, it is too late, right? We need to have these kinds of interventions much earlier. And so they placed a significant amount of attention on elementary and early middle school education and making sure students had a significant, solid foundation. And I think that's a really interesting take as well, because as I think I may have mentioned this on the show before, but a lot of times we're talking about when a student gets to high school, A lot of doors may already be open or closed for them, right? So, based on how students perform very early, sometimes we're talking about fourth or fifth grade, will determine whether or not they're allowed to take certain advanced classes or certain high school courses in middle school that will open the door for them to do things like dual enrollment in high school, right? So, understanding that you could take college classes in high school the first day of ninth grade is simply not enough, because that will have required that you took some prerequisites earlier on. So, getting in touch with these students, making sure that we're opening those doors for them and offering these things very early on and encouraging this kind of acceleration. Does that mean every child needs to be in an accelerated program? No, but reflecting on what doors we already close for our students and at what point, I think, is really critical to ensuring that long-term solutions are going to be available for our students.
It was a great article, Sarah, and just really fantastic news coming out of Colorado.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. Well, we'd love to hear what your opinions are, and we'd love to hear you share some stories from other parts of the country or the world where things are happening. Please feel free to reach out to us using the hashtag BigIdeasInEducation. You can always reach us at Academica Media. Ryan is at Ryan, Kair, and I am at Read with Phi, Fye. Thanks for being with us. We hope you have a great week.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.